Koehn serves as the Chief Sustainability and Resilience Officer for the City of Boulder and directs Boulder's Energy Future Project and the Cool Boulder campaign, which our PPE committee is engaged in. Jonathan holds positions on multiple advisory boards and commissions, including the National Association of Clean Air Agencies and Colorado Communities for Climate Action. He holds degrees in environmental science, biology, and marine sciences at the University of Florida. Jonathan will help us understand Boulder's ambitious climate and energy goals, which include the city's plan for environmental stewardship, climate change mitigation and resiliency, and social equity in the face of climate change. Please give a warm Boulder Rotary Club welcome to Jonathan Koehn.
Holy smokes, look at all these beautiful faces. I work for the government. I'm not used to applause, so I appreciate that. I'm going to take it. It was really nice. First of all, huge appreciation for being invited today. It's really nice to see some of you again, to meet some of you today. I want to also extend a welcome and greeting to those online. I know that there are a few that are joining us, so really a great pleasure to be with you today. And I hope that I can just walk you through. Obviously, there's a lot that we can cover in this space. I was joking beforehand that I don't get invited to things very often to talk about something that is like this existential crisis, right? So I don't get invited to parties very often. So this is nice. What I'm not going to do today is show you a bunch of charts and graphs. What I'm going to do is try to give you a sense of the things that we are doing here in Boulder that are really transformational, that are really creating value, that are really making lives better when we think about programs, policies, and efforts and strategies related to climate change. So I'm not going to show you a bunch of graphs. We're not going to go there. So I'm going to walk you through some slides, and hopefully we'll get to some Q&A pretty quickly. Okay, so again, my name is Jonathan Koehn, and I have the honor of serving as the director of the Climate Initiatives Department. I've been with the city about 18 years, which feels like a very long time, and I've really seen some transformation in the work that we've been doing here in our own community. You don't need to read this. I just want you to understand that we have a department of around 20 folks or so working in a variety of capacities, and we're really partnering with a number of agencies within local government, all the other departments, and then of course within the community to achieve a lot of the objectives that we have. Again, I'm going to go through slides pretty quickly today because it's really important that we get to some questions from all of you, but I wanted to share a little bit of some color of the work that we are involved in right now. So things that you would imagine our department working on, advancing more clean energy opportunities, more clean transportation, thinking about things like our e-bike incentive program for low income. We manage our streetlight acquisition program, pilots around technology. Our partnership with Excel Energy is housed out of my department. So just some things that I wanted you to be aware of. One that's coming up relatively soon is some discussion with council about landscape equipment. And then things like building codes and energy codes that we'll be taking to council in the next couple of months. A lot of our work is framed around our community goals, and so this gets a little wonky, and I won't go into it, but I want you to understand kind of the framing of how we orient our programs. We have some pretty ambitious goals. This is kind of the DNA of Boulder. We try to be leaders in this space. So a lot of our work is pinned to an emission reduction target of 70% reduction by 2030. Trying to become a net zero community by 2035 and carbon positive by 2040. We don't need to really get into the definitions of those, but what I will tell you, it's pretty aggressive, and we believe there is a roadmap to get from here to there. So again, a lot of text on here, but I wanted to share there's some additional targets that kind of nest underneath those goals that I think are quite exciting because it gives opportunities for individuals to really plug in and play a really important role. So thinking about waste diversion, we have a goal to reduce waste by 85% by 2025. The second is 100% renewable electricity by 2030. This is a really ambitious and aggressive target, but it's also in sight, and it really helps us orient the work that we do at the state level and the work that we do with our utility partner to make sure that we can see a clear pathway to get there. We also have a goal to reduce emissions in our own city organization. We're a big organization, by 70% by 2030. And then 100 megawatts of local renewable energy generation by 2030. I will tell you, this one you can put a check mark by. We've actually done this. We've already accomplished that last one. In 2022, we're well over 100 megawatts of installed capacity. So we're on to our 2035 target and 2040 targets already. And this is solar on rooftops. This is our hydroelectric. This is a lot of the clean energy generation that is actually installed here in Boulder. Okay, so how are we doing? I didn't say I wasn't going to show you any graphs, but I did want to show you this one. This gives you a sense of how we're doing as a community based on two benchmarks. When we started this work, when I started with the city back in 2006, we were baselining against a 2005 year. So basically emissions against a 2005 baseline. So if you look on the right side of this slide, you can see we've achieved about a 38% reduction in emissions since 2005. That's really, really good. That's incredible. We updated our baseline year to 2018 just a couple of years ago. So the left-hand side that shows 18.2, that shows what we've accomplished from that baseline. And if you look at it like a speedometer, you can see that 70% mark. Basically, what this is telling you is we have a ways to go. We have to accelerate. We have to do better in order to achieve our targets. I want to say the targets that we've set, those aren't just specific to Boulder. Those are the science-based targets that we know we need to hit globally. That's why we adopted them. We know that they're aggressive. We know that we're going to do our fair share as a community here in Boulder. Okay, don't be afraid of this slide. You don't need to absorb all of this. But what I want you to take away from this, I get this question a lot. So where do our emissions come from right now, and what are we doing to make sure that we're tackling the biggest sectors of emissions? Pay attention to the size of the circle. The left-hand circle are our emissions from 2022, and you can see the parts of the pie, right? The big yellow is our electricity. The bottom one is natural or methane gas. Transportation is kind of the blue. So basically, energy-related sector mostly makes up all of our emissions. So if you look then to the smaller pie chart, that's what we're forecasting in 2030. So what you can tell is there's a big chunk that's missing. Electricity emissions is missing from that pie chart. That is because we've been incredibly effective at the state level in driving our utility to essentially decommission most of their coal-based generation units in the state of Colorado. So our anticipated or expected portfolio will look something like that right-hand circle, which is really good. But you can tell that still doesn't get us to 100%. So we still have some things to do to drive gas out of our portfolio and deal with transportation-related emissions. Okay, taking a breath. So what do we know about this work? And I'm going to give you my personal kind of reflections here after doing this work now in Boulder for many, many years. There's a few things that we recognize kind of change the landscape and the way we do this work. Rather than just saying, let's do more of the same stuff, what have we learned? Well, the first thing is that climate change is happening faster, so we have to move more quickly. So we have to choose tactics and solutions that are going to move us more rapidly. Second, we know that we have to reduce emissions near zero, and we have to do that really quickly, at least by mid-century. So again, kind of accelerating our work in that space. We also know that cities aren't going to be able to achieve climate neutrality on our own, nor will the success of just a few cities be enough. So how do we scale up the work? How do we bring other communities along? And for those of us working in Boulder, how do we work more effectively outside our own boundaries to really support our peer communities in the region? And then it's not just about reducing emissions, it's also about adapting, and it's being resilient to the changes that we're already feeling. We all in this room have experienced the impacts or climate-related disasters back in 2013 from the flood, the fires, the event of the outage just a couple of weeks ago. All of those are really driven by changing climate factors, and so we have to adapt to those conditions on a regular basis. The other thing I wanted to highlight is, as we think about our work, And what you're looking at here, if you look on the left side, this is kind of the traditional approach that cities take. It's how do we stabilize climate by changing to clean energy sources, reducing transportation, doing all the things that we know are the right things to do. But we know we need to focus on that right-hand side too. And those are the things that really help adapt and help build our resilience as a community. And resilience, I want to say this, it's not just about building walls stronger or pipes bigger because we know we're going to have more runoff at different times of the year. It's about social resilience too. It's about what happens when we get knocked down as community members. How do we lift each other back up? How do we strengthen that cohesion in our neighborhoods? So there's a really important social aspect of resilience too. And that's why I wanted to note that in the middle, we've really wrapped our work around the central pillar of equity and climate resilience, recognizing that many in our community are disproportionately impacted by climate impacts. So those in our community that don't have air conditioning, how will they adapt during more days of extreme heat if they don't have transportation alternatives? So we really are thinking differently about the work that we do. Okay. I know I'm going fast. We push out our progress on a regular basis through a series of reports, and that's what you're looking at. Each year we do a greenhouse gas inventory. We actually publish our results. These are really, really sophisticated documents. They're really cool. They show where we're making progress, where we're not. One of the things that we did this past year for the first time is a consumption-based inventory. So rather than just looking at things that we all control, like our energy and our transportation, it looked at outside or upstream impacts. So emissions from goods and services, all of that Amazon purchasing that we do. What about the impacts from those upstream purchases, goods and services? And so we issued a report this past November called a consumption-based inventory. And it won't surprise you to know that our overall inventory and overall emissions went up quite a bit. But that's a more honest way of accounting. Okay, the other thing I wanted to mention is impact is broader than just reducing carbon. Anybody in here seen a metric ton of carbon? Anybody ever touched one, felt it? It's well, we have a couple of them. Carbon doesn't really motivate people so much. Values motivate people. Happiness and joy and safety, economic productivity, those are things that motivate. And so we're starting to orient our work around impact. How have we made lives better? So we launched a story map this past year, and it's on our website, and you can go through. This is a screenshot. And there's testimonials, those videos from businesses and individuals in our community really recognizing the impact and the benefit of our work, which has been very cool. We also have far-reaching impact from our department. Some of you may be familiar with our lawsuit against ExxonMobil and Suncor that made it all the way to the Supreme Court last year. We just held oral arguments in that case here in Boulder District Court in February, so that is moving forward. And then in the introduction, you heard a comment about CC4CA. This is a coalition that I helped form, as all good things happen, over a beer in my garage, which is basically saying we need to have more presence when it comes to changing state and federal policy. And so we were able to create this organization. There are about 45 cities and jurisdictions across the state that are part of CC4CA. It's really an exciting endeavor. We have a seat at the table with the governor's office and legislators as we move forward on climate policy. Okay, how are we doing? I'm gonna just look at, doing good. So I want to go through a little bit and orient you. Now that was like big and kind of way up here. I want to give you a sense of how we actually are orienting a lot of our work here locally in three big buckets, three big areas in the department. The first is in the space of energy. So energy is just wildly huge, right? So we're talking about electricity, we're talking about natural gas in industrial processing and heating. We're talking about energy related to moving us and goods around. So there's a lot there. Our work is really oriented in four big buckets. First, how do we design a just energy transition so no one's being left behind? So affordable and accessible energy for everyone. Moving to the right, making sure that we are really driving a clean and resilient electricity supply. I think everyone experienced the disruption And just last night, we hosted Excel, who gave a presentation to our city council about the outage that we experienced a couple weeks ago and the disruption that that caused. How do we protect ourselves against those disruptions? How do we identify the critical facilities and the impact on vulnerable people in our communities, in our business community that were severely impacted by that outage? What can we do to make sure that we have redundancy and reliability in our systems? Down on the bottom left, high-performing, healthy buildings. We've developed a roadmap that aligns a lot of our code work to make sure that as residents and businesses, we spend most of our time indoors. How are our buildings supporting health and safety and really recognizing that our buildings are critically important in that way? And so we have a number of code work that will be moving forward, updating our energy code, updating our building code, looking at smart regs, which is our rental housing efficiency requirements later this year. And on the bottom right, clean mobility. If you have to drive, how can we get more people to drive electric? How do we make sure that we have infrastructure there available to everybody? So how do we think about mobility in a different way? So some things that we've been doing, just kind of some bullet points here I'll highlight. Most of our work is driven through two broader programs, Energy Smart for residential and PACE for commercial. We actually scaled this up and had Boulder County administer these programs because it's much more far-reaching, and in terms of contractor training and making sure there's consistency in the region, it made sense for it to be at a bigger scale. So we've established a national model for rebate and advising services, and I always like this statistic. We have served over 5,000 homes and 1,300 businesses through our rebates and programs. That's pretty extraordinary. That means that there was a lot of demand for this kind of incentive. So we've given out, this is a little bit old now, close to $10 million in rebates, in residential and commercial rebates. And that has leveraged almost $30 million in private sector investment. So again, I think there's a really good story to tell there. And we've had some substantial impact in terms of emissions reduction as well. Here's a really cool thing I wanted to highlight. A couple of years ago, we were made aware that, if some of you may remember, we had not only impact from the Marshall Fire in terms of those buildings that we lost, but there was a straight line wind event that had extraordinary impact on mobile and manufactured homes in the region. And we realized that there was really no opportunity to help support those homeowners. There were no rebates, there were no grants in existence that were really matching up at the speed and scale to help people. I talked to so many residents that more than a year later still had holes in their roofs with blue tarps covering because they had no way of knowing how to actually do those repairs. So we used our climate tax dollars, and you can see some of the stats here. There were over 400 damaged mobile homes, and so we've actually launched a program. We have now provided service to close to 130 mobile homes. We've done direct repairs. We are helping them not only just do repairs with skirts and some of the other kind of fascia, but really thinking about the health of the occupants, looking at heat pumps, looking at opportunities to weatherize, because it's a really critical, important part of our community. And that's been a really exciting thing. We actually have spent about $2 million. And when you have a successful thing, people want to be part of it. So Boulder County has chipped in about $3 million additional dollars this year. So we'll have a total of $5 million going to do these repairs in our community over the next year or so. That's been really exciting. Okay, a couple things coming this year. Everybody doing okay? Hanging in there? Okay. Okay, I do this. So a couple things coming this year, energy code update, looking on some really cool things at the state level around zero emissions communities, a bunch around resilience, some new technology pilots, what's called V2G, which is vehicle to grid or vehicle to building, where you can actually charge and discharge your batteries, draw electricity off of your batteries to power your building when the lights and the power go out, and vice versa to help save some money. So we're doing some cool pilots there. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about nature-based climate solutions, and then I'm going to wrap this up so we can get to some Q&A. This is the newest area of our work, and it really is based on a reflection that we really have this opportunity to recalibrate our relationship with nature in a really unique way. really thinking about how nature plays a really critical role in thinking about stabilizing climate and becoming more resilient to climate, and those other values, right? We all live here because of our connectedness to nature. And so our nature-based climate solutions was really born out of that space. This will look familiar to many of you. Cool Boulder was our signature program that we launched. It's a collaboration, and please don't try to read all that little tiny text, I apologize. This is a collaboration that we did with now about 35 locally based organizations, really focused on 3 action areas: pollinator pathways, connected canopies, and absorbent landscapes. So really, really amazing work, and this was really just an experiment to see if people would be interested in this kind of work, and it is really exploded. And in fact, the model, the Cool Boulder model, is now being replicated across the country. We have about 10 or 15 vanguard cities from San Francisco and Minneapolis and Cleveland who are following the lead and replicating the Cool Boulder model, which is really fun. Some things that we've done with Cool Boulder, some of you, anybody participate in the heat mapping? Okay, no hands. Mitch did. I saw you. All right, gold star. So a couple of years ago, about a year and a half ago, we did this volunteer-driven exercise where we sent people around with sensors to really map extreme heat in our city to see where do we see urban heat island existing and why. And I won't go into the details. You can see a snapshot of one of the resultant maps on the right-hand side, but really extraordinary information to show when we have mature tree canopies, we see severe benefits in terms of reducing heat island and urban heat island impacts on residents and businesses. And so it allows us to make really important decisions when it comes to policies and investments around extreme heat, which we're going to see more and more of. So I can share a link out, but we have a great website. You can explore all of the details. You can do these little sliders across some of the graphs, really interactive website around extreme heat. Some things to look for this year with our nature-based solutions in Cool Boulder, really launching some of the new partnerships around pollinator advocates, tree tender trainings. If anybody has done that, that's a really, really awesome program. Really taking care of what we already have. We have a lot of work to do there. We have a lot of urban canopy, and a lot of it needs some desperate care. Tree giveaways, we're doing a bunch around youth-centered forestry opportunities, including actually developing a trained cohort of young people to go out and learn the trade of working with tree canopy, learning to work with regenerative agriculture. And this is a really new area for us, and it's going to be really exciting to see how that launches. And then, of course, connecting to a lot of our WUI, our wildfire urban interface, and the work that we're doing around wildfire protection. All right, I'm almost done, I promise. Third big area is our circular economy. This is a term that may or may not be familiar to you. It's kind of a more mature term to zero waste. The idea there is that most of our process is very linear. We dig stuff up, we make stuff, and then we throw things away. Circularity is a concept that was pioneered mostly in Amsterdam, and we did some work. You could see a tiny little thing down on the right-hand corner called Metabolic. That's the firm that we worked with a couple of years ago out of Amsterdam to design what does a circular city approach look like in transportation and in food and in materials. And so this is really how we're starting to orient a lot of our work towards circularity. Embedded in that, of course, is our zero waste programming, how we're supporting diversion on a regular basis. But I want to share a couple cool things. A lot of the areas of work that we're focused on now are consumer goods, organics, a lot around reuse and repair. We've gotten so far away from repairing with just this idea of throwing everything away. So reuse is such an important opportunity for us. How do we support local organizations that are really pioneers in reuse? And we've really seen that start to take some shape. Buildings, I want to talk about very, very quickly. If any of you caught wind of this, this is a really exciting opportunity. So the Alpine Balsam, the old hospital site, I'm sure everybody in here knows it. We tried something very unique this past couple of years. Another chart, of course, here I said I wasn't going to do charts, and I'm doing a chart. When you think about waste, if you can see the yellow on this chart, that is from buildings. That's construction waste. when we destroy buildings, we just bulldoze and all that goes into a landfill. We tried an experiment. We said, let's do the first deconstruction of a hospital anywhere. And it was. It was the first time a hospital had been deconstructed. There's some pictures on the right-hand side. We actually deconstructed and diverted 97% of that building. 97%. That means that all of the steel was reused. It went to it went into the new fire station on 30th Street. All of the materials were used on site, and 97% was diverted from landfills. That is an extraordinary number. It was so far beyond what we thought we were capable of doing. We've gotten national attention for this project. This is the way we're going to think about our buildings. How do we build them to be deconstructed, and how do we actually do it moving forward? So just wanted to highlight that because it was really exciting. All right, I'm going to fly through these so we can get to Q&A. The other areas that we've been doing, of course, is working on things like the producer responsibility law. We helped write that bill last year. The Plastic Pollution Reduction Act. I don't know what happened to that slide, my fault. So what's coming this year? Expanding our work around reusable, especially around durable takeout containers. This is one of the things that we have to just realize. We do, we had all of this work to get people to use compostable cups and containers and forks, but they're still single-use items. How do we get back into the idea of reusing what can be reused, durable opportunities? So we have a great program with right now about 20 or so restaurants that do reusable takeout containers. And there's a great app. I will make sure you have access to it and you know which restaurants actually are part of that. It's a really cool idea. We're starting to see more and more cities do that. Improvements to our deconstruction work. More local regulation of single-use products, particularly plastics. Our council wants to see us bringing forward some more ideas around that. That's what's on tap for 2024 there. Okay. Whew, flying through this. So we put out a lot of information, and I will tell you, I'm just kind of tapping the surface of all the different programs and efforts that we have within our department. We have a newsletter that we put out on a quarterly-ish basis. We have a great podcast, if you like podcasts. We have a whole series that we've done around wildfire protection and what we are doing to harden our landscapes in that way. We have a lot that goes out in the city's newsroom, and of course our departmental page that's got a lot of detail there. Couple things coming up. If this got you a little bit excited about this work, we have some public events that are coming up. We do these community meetings. We had our first one, which was me doing a lot of this kind of stuff, just talking about high level. We are doing a deep dive into nature-based solutions next week. We will do these. That one will actually be at Growing Gardens. And we'll spend a lot of the time there just focusing in on nature-based solutions. And then you can see July 24th, we're going to talk about circular economy more deeply, and then energy on September 25th. And then we're trying something different. We're going to do office hours where if there's just something on your mind that you want to talk about, a new idea, you want to just ask some questions, we're doing some office hours, which are just kind of drop in. Last thing, last slide. If you are looking for something to do this weekend, we are hosting a screening of Common Ground, which is a fantastic film. We are doing that at E-Town. There are some tickets available. I just looked this morning, and right now we have about 40 or so left in terms of capacity at E-Town. On our website, happy to send you more information. I'm going to stop there. And I'm really excited to hear what's on your mind, what kind of questions can I answer for you. So thank you. Hands, I love it.
I understand that Boulder has made a lot of strides in what they've done for the economy, but one of the things that I don't like is that lots of stuff is focused on e-vehicles. What about multimodal transportation and things like that, and getting people out of the cars, period?
Yeah, what is your name? Christine, thank you. Christine, excellent question. And I expected it because I kind of went right into the EV place. So Boulder has this long history. If you remember Go Boulder, our transportation department, which is really focused on multimodal, getting people out of cars, absolutely. And if you heard me when I said if you have to drive electric, We actually just spent about $500,000 last year. If anybody took advantage of our e-bike incentive, did anybody get one? Yes, Susan did. So yeah, how are we making, this is such an interesting thing. If anybody has heard of the guy, his name is Gil Peñalosa. He's a famous planner. I was just with him last Friday. We design our roadways for cars, not people. How are we designing our community to actually facilitate people getting out of their cars, using multimodal forms of transportation, walking, biking? We treat people on bikes and riding buses as second-class citizens, which is absurd. So how do we change that culture and the mindset? It's difficult, no question about it. So my comment was, if you have to drive, if you can't take the hop and the skip, or you cannot take other forms of transportation, then you should drive electric. So I so appreciate your comment. I'd love to connect you with the work that's going on in the transportation department, if helpful.
Thank you so much for coming to talk to us today. So can you address our recent step back in what we can compost and how we're going to get back to being able to compost everything again?
Yeah, can you tell me your name?
I am Sally.
Hi, Sally, thank you. I was hoping someone would ask that question. So I will share with you, it was very abrupt for us as well. There are a few things that I would mention here. First of all, Boulder is one of the only communities that has an ordinance requiring businesses to offer composting and organics collection. So it really sent us into a tailspin when our processor, which is A1 Organics, they are out of county. That is the facility that our entire front range sends all of our composting organic material, collected from our homes, collected from our businesses. What they were experiencing is significant amounts of contamination coming in those loads. Not necessarily from Boulder, I will be honest about that, because we've been at this a while. We still have a significant amount of contamination in business waste, but generally speaking, our loads are pretty clean. So the challenge that they faced is they just basically said no more. We cannot accept certain streams of organic material until you can verify that it's going to be clean material. That's why we saw the huge change. That's why we stopped taking, that's why you saw the changes in restaurants in particular. That was a big one. So your question is, when can we get back to collecting the same types and amount of material that we were able to before? One of the things that we're looking into is, can we design and develop our own regional composting facility? Can we work with Boulder County to accept different forms of material rather than putting it in trucks and shipping it, 80 miles away, which is not necessarily hitting all of the impact that we want, and collecting the material that we want. So right now we are in the process of evaluating those options, working with our partners like EcoCycle and with Western Organics, and figuring out what those options are. So our plan is that we will be able to get back and expand the materials that we can collect. But I don't want to miss the opportunity to say, as a team, we were really impacted by this. But it was also an opportunity to kind of jump forward and talk about reuse, to talk about durables, and to talk about how do we get away from kind of the single-use items anyway. But I think we do need to bring some of those materials back into the waste stream so they can be diverted. Yeah. Long answer, I'm sorry.
So that was really inspiring. Thank you very much. This is a question about recycling of plastics. Not a question of which ones can be recycled, but is there a list of which plastics are recycled here in Boulder?
Yes, EcoCycle, hopefully everyone is familiar with EcoCycle, such an amazing partner. We're so fortunate to have them here locally. We worked with EcoCycle about a year and a half ago. Remember, there was a lot of news about, wait a minute, where are these things actually going? Are they actually being recycled, or are they just being stockpiled somewhere? And so EcoCycle put out an excellent piece on what's being collected, where it's going, and assuring us, hey, if I put it in that container, it's actually going where you say it's going to go, and not just going and being incinerated or sitting on a dock somewhere or sent overseas in a way that it's not being processed. So I would encourage you, I can't just pull it up, but they have a great EcoCycle's website. They have a whole list of where things are going. I would encourage you to go there.
Almost every day I read something new about AI and how it's affecting the world. And I saw the other day that they are building these huge data centers that require huge amounts of electricity that are going to produce problems for our electric grid. To protect themselves, they're ordering these huge backup generators that are on back order for a year. So my question is, how is AI affecting you or what you're doing, or how's it expected to change what you do or don't do?
Well, let me answer first by saying I love being able to write messages to my daughters using ChatGPT, but knowing that the impact that that has, just to your point. So AI is a really interesting one, and it's not just electricity, it's more importantly water. So if you think about the computing space for everything that we do in the cloud, not just AI, but everything that goes into the cloud requires huge, huge data centers to be able to support and hold all of that data. AI is certainly really starting to kind of show that that is a real issue. And so this is a concept that I often describe as exporting our pollution. So in other words, we use all of that computing power, and a place like Wyoming or Bangladesh or wherever those data centers exist, they have to support those needs, and the water impact is extraordinary to cool those sites. So there is a lot that we are now learning, and in fact, one of our council members and I have been talking about this very issue. What could we do here locally to make sure that we understand that issue and we're making wise choices? So it's not just about supporting the electricity supply. I just want to make sure that I'm making that emphasis, that it's all natural resources necessary to support those big computing centers. It's pretty extraordinary. So I don't have the answer for you, except to know that I think there are a lot of cities that are starting to kind of raise an eyebrow to say, this is kind of a big deal. Yeah. I think we have time for maybe
Thank
one or two
you.
more.
Yeah, thank you for your talk today and all the work you do. Quick question, big goals, and it would be one thing if the city wasn't really growing, but there's so much growth going on, like for instance, the 2 hotels on the corner of Broadway and University. So how does, just give us a little bit of an idea of how the city gets involved with, big buildings like that in terms of helping to make sure that they're aligned with your goals.
Yeah, can I ask your name?
Jerry.
Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate it. I'm not using this against you. It's just nice to put a name with a face, by the way. Jerry said that no, I'm kidding. Fantastic question. And I think we are building our literacy in this in a really rapid way. So I will just share with all of you, my department historically is kind of an appendage, right? We're kind of over here doing some good stuff around climate. Over the past, say, 5 years, I've really been pleased and delighted that we as a city organization are really taking this issue of climate more seriously. And in fact, it's kind of become one of the central pillars through what we call the Sustainability, Equity, and Resilience Framework. The reason I share that with you is that we're starting to really think about these impacts across all of the operations of the organization in a much more holistic and thoughtful way. So you bring up a really important point around growth, around density, around things like new development, and sort of things that we can control in terms of wielding the power in our building codes to make sure that what's being built is what we want built, but that doesn't solve the problem. And so you're describing things like, I think you're probably talking about the conference center on the hill that's being built by the university. That's always an interesting challenge because they are an exempt agency, of course, and so they don't have to follow the specific rules, the building guidelines and code of the city, though they try very hard, and we're good partners in that way. This council now, we've had some discussion about this idea of growth. What does it actually look like, and how do we think about it from a climate and broader sustainability perspective? I will tell you, I find it fascinating that people on both sides of the argument of density weaponize climate. So those that want more density use climate as the reason for more density, and those that want less density use climate as the reason for less density. which says to me, that's a great place to be. We can sit right in the middle and we can talk about the pros and cons of the decisions that we make, right? Because you push on one thing and then something pops out over there. So less density, people still are going to be commuting in. 60,000 in commuters daily has a big impact when it comes to traffic congestion, ground source ozone pollution, so forth and so on, big issues. Affordability, all of the things really get intertwined. We describe, and Jerry, I'm not going to answer your question as probably directly as you want, we are starting to really understand this term called a polycrisis, and that, I never like to use the word crisis, it never inspires anybody, but the idea that things like housing and safety, public health, climate, economic issues are so connected. You cannot treat them in isolation. And so for the first time, we're really starting to think about climate. What would it look like to use climate and sustainability and resilience as those cornerstones in decision making? I think you're going to hear a lot more of that in the next year or two as this council really starts to kind of wrestle with those issues. So.
Thank you. We have time for one more question.
Great.
How do you deal with the conflict between Boulder's housing priority and the climate goals that you're pursuing?
Yeah, can I ask your name?
Willie.
Willie. Yeah, Willie, great. And that's what I was trying to get at with Jerry. It's like, there's asymmetry there, right? So how do we think about this issue of climate? And, you know, part of the challenge that we have faced for some time is we have always treated what happens in Boulder like under this bubble. That as long as we do it here, it doesn't have this upstream impact, right? And so this is kind of the interesting thing. So if people can't afford and aren't living here and they're living somewhere else, you can look at it in one hand and say, look, our energy use went down. Therefore, look at our greenhouse gas inventory, success. It's not success at all. We have more people commuting in. They're using more gas to drive into town. They're living in lower quality homes than we can control because our codes are stricter. And so when I use that word asymmetry, I don't use it lightly. I think that there is a real tension between and connectedness between our housing policy and how we think about the elements of not just affordability, but how are we building? The discussion around density and ADUs, it all gets mixed together in thinking about how are we supporting these broader discussions around making lives better, and how does it result in terms of, what are the results in terms of emissions? And if we have more emissions here, but they're less somewhere else, that's not failure. So again, this is a global issue, and so we have to look at it through a bigger lens, and that's very, very difficult. Willie, I'm not giving you the answer probably you were looking for either, except to say, I really appreciate the question. I appreciate that we as a community are starting to have that conversation, because we haven't. It's just kind of been tucked away for a while, and now we have to face some of those big issues. So, yeah. Scott's standing up. I'm done. Getting the hook.
I've warned him. Anyway, thank you very much for educating us and making us think about the issues. In your honor, we have decided to give it 100 doses of polio vaccine in your name. Thank you very much.
That's a real honor. Thank you. Thank you.
This May, 25,000 Rotarians across 10 states will join forces for an epic day of service. We'll serve our communities, raise $1 million for club projects year-round, and build our membership.
As District Governor, I invite all clubs and all members, all Rotarians, to get involved in this epic day of service. You don't want to miss it.
The Service Above Self dinner on April 27th is a success before the night even kicks off. 8 generous sponsors have stepped up to make sure that's the case. These sponsors have underwritten many of the costs for this wonderful event, which means your donations can go directly into making this year another blowout for our foundation and our community. Generosity Wealth Management, Mike Brady. Women in Harmony, Sally Brown's new company. True Community Care. YMCA of Northern Colorado and Southern Wyoming. Carl Kurtz and Janet Beardsley. Norma Portnoy. Jim and Kathy Rolfus. And Leslie Hertz. Please take a moment to thank these companies and individuals for their commitment to Boulder Rotary and creating hope in the world.
Every year, Boulder Rotary sends students to RILA, the Rotary Youth Leadership Award Camp held at YMCA of the Rockies in Estes Park. Students learn about their own ability to lead, community building skills, and they have fun. Students who are currently a high school sophomore, junior, or senior may apply to attend RILA, and 7th graders may apply to attend Young RILA. RILA will be held at the YMCA of the Rockies in Estes Park from July 28th to August 2nd, 2024, and Young RILA conferences are held June 23rd to the 28th or July 7th to 12th. We need your help to find great students to apply for these scholarships. We have until April 30th. The RIB, our newsletter, has a link to the RILA applications. Don't miss the chance to give the gift of confidence and leadership to a young person. Sometimes problems seem really big, like pollution, poverty, and access to clean water. One of the best things about being a Rotarian is that Rotary empowers members to dig in and find ways to help and eventually solve the biggest problems in this world. Next week, we'll hear about what Rotary is doing about the Colorado River, one of the biggest issues in our region. We'll watch a video produced by and for Rotarians about the Colorado River's future and discuss ways we can help. The environmental, economic, and energy emergencies are looming on the river that is the lifeblood of the American West. Come next week and find out how we can make a difference.
I just want to tell you both good luck. We're all counting on you.
All together now. Have a great weekend.